Anyway, we're gonna move on to topic number 2. We got our quarterback rankings that we have, man. I'm looking forward to it. We might as well get right to it. Is that the right one? Yes, it is. Okay. Number 20 through 16. And Zay, I'm actually gonna send you the two flyers that, or the one flyer that we did, but two, me and Zach. And I'm gonna allow you to kind of respond to what we have this far. Maybe a guy we rank low, maybe a guy we rank too high. I want to know your thoughts. But as you do that, as I send that, Zach, I want people who's listening to the show for the first time, not familiar about what we do, here and how we do it. Our criteria, Zach, the mic is yours.
Yeah, Lil, and before I get into that, I'll just say I actually just thought of an idea, and Lil, let me know if you're good with this. But I figure with Zay, that's a good idea, sending him the flyer of our two lists. And how about this? Whatever list he likes better, whatever list he agrees with more, why doesn't that person get the opportunity to go first today? You like that idea? You
Yeah,
that?
I like that, man. I don't want Zay to be sitting here watching I have a dream speeches, right? So Zay, you can kind of, kick us off and then we'll take it.
So with Zach's list, just so I'm not sitting in silence speaking, we have 32 Bo Nix, 31 Will Levis, 30 Derek Carr, 29 Jacoby Brissett, 28 Daniel Jones, 27 Russell Wilson, 26 Gardner Minshew, 25 Jaden Daniels, 24 Bryce Young, 23 Geno Smith, 22 Sam Darnold, and 21 Deshaun Watson. For Lil's list, we have similarities. Bo Nix at 32, Brissett at 31, Minshew at 30, Bryce Young at 29, Daniel Jones at 28, Will Levis at 27, Daniel Jones at 26, Russell Wilson at 25, Derek Carr at 24, Sam Darnold at 23, Anthony Richardson at 22, and at number 21, Caleb Williams. I think I like Lil's list a little bit more just because I am very interested on that Anthony Richardson at 22 pick. I thought he was like heating up a little bit before he got hurt, but I would love to hear that one a little bit more. But I think Lil's list is a little more. I like it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think for Anthony Richardson, right, and kind of my thought process, in regards to ranking him on this list, obviously a hard guy to rank because we liked him. Me and Zach liked the guy coming out of college. He has everything on tape. The intangibles, could throw the ball, make the special throws, right? But he didn't win a lot in college. And Zach did a very good job, even if I disagreed a little bit, with kind of combining him and Caleb Williams into one, just banking on upside. But I would say to that is AR-15 and Caleb didn't win a lot in college. And the talent was always there. The film, you watch the film of both of these guys, you're like, they're going to be stars in the NFL. But I think sometimes we have a love for what we see and not what is real, not what is there, right? We get love. We fall in love with the okey doke, right? And I think right now, what I want to learn from AR-15, or what I want to know is, can he make the routine NFL throws, right? We know he can make the special throws, but can he make the routine throws? He has a great play caller, so he should be in good hands. I would like to see him in year 2 kind of show us that upside that we've been banking on. So, yeah.
And I'll just answer the question Lil asked at the start, for anyone who's just tuning in to us for the first time. Every year, the two of us rank each and every quarterback in the NFL 1 to 32. Based on the year, our criteria changes, but at the end of the day, we're just ranking 1 to 32, each of the best quarterbacks in the league, guys we prefer over each other. And, each of our lists, each of our criteria are different. But for me, right off the bat, projection has a lot to do with it. My list, you might not agree with it right now, but my goal is by season's end, after 18 weeks of football next year, how do I think the 32 best quarterbacks in the league are going to look? Recent sample size, how you did last year, accomplishments up to this point, resume, it all means a lot. But I think for me, if I were to just summarize and describe my list in one way, it's projection based, a lot of it. Like at the end of this season, how do I think you're going to do? And where do I think you and your team are going to stand with each other? Because we know the quarterback position is the most important position in all of sports, and teams are moving and confidently off and on these guys night and day. So that's what makes it so great.
Zay, before I go with my new set, I'm going to throw it back to you. What are your thoughts on AR-15?
I think AR-15 is better than advertised. We saw that he wasn't winning a lot in Florida, and a lot of people called him a project quarterback. A lot of people said he wouldn't find success in the NFL due to the fact of his inaccurate throws at times, his inability to find an open guy and scan the field at a collegiate level to wouldn't transfer over to an NFL level. And I just didn't see that his first couple games with the Indianapolis Colts. I think the Colts, they've done a fantastic job making sure that he was like protected and that they had schemes drawn up to find Pittman, to find the other receivers on that football field. I'm losing track of a receiver. He had a great year last year on the Colts.
You talking about Michael Pittman? No, Joshua Downs. Josh
Thank you.
Downs.
And
Downs.
I'm bringing this up too. They drafted Adonai Mitchell from Texas, who I thought they got great value on that pick. I thought he could have been a first or second round pick, and he fell to the third, I think, due to some character concerns. But I think he's a dog, and I think he's going to fit in great.
And I think what nobody discussed about Anthony Richardson was his leadership in the locker room. They was he's a very poised young man. The way they were speaking about Anthony Richardson before going into NFL was this guy was going to be the next Jamarcus Russell, or he's going to have a lot of character issues. But this guy he's a well-poised individual from all the interviews he's done, for everybody to talk about, even within the Colts organization. So I think for me, I think it's a little low. I mean, he's a little high up on the list in terms of 22 or low, I guess. It depends, because the bottom 20. But it's because we haven't seen enough of him. And I think we're going to see a lot more. I think he's going to outplay that 22 ranking. But I think he has a lot of talent. And I think if he plays a full season, we'll get to see the full potential that Anthony Richardson can reach.
All right. Zach, say I'm ready to hit it off with mine. 20 through 16. Okay. And just picking up where Zay left off about character, right? Because character is very important. When it comes to my criteria, I'm looking at eye tests, right? With my own two eyes. These are the 32 best quarterbacks in football. But this is where it gets tricky. I'm also projecting you into the year like Zach. But I will admit that in years past, I got crazy with the projections and I started over projecting Trevor Lawrence, right? That's one of the guys I over projected. And we all kind of, did. So I'd take the bullet with everybody, right? But also, other guys as well. So I'm a little bit more conservative this time around when it comes to that, but I'm still projecting, right? Obviously, you got to start or you got to play at least 75% of the games, right? So that's my criteria mainly. And at number 20, speaking of character and being likable, obviously, I agree with Zay. AR-15 is very likable, but this guy is not. And that's Deshaun Watson. I'm going to have him at number 20. Obviously, the contract, $230 million guaranteed, has been a disaster thus far. And I think it's a very fascinating topic because if you were to rank Deshaun Watson a couple years ago on these quarterback rankings, he would probably be in the 5 through number 1 range. Not probably, he would be 5 through number 1. He'll be in that little bracket. But if you were to judge the last 2 years in doing these quarterback rankings, he should be in the 32 through 27 range. He's been that bad. So trying to obviously look at that and simulate in my mind him trying to tap back into some of that potential that would have put him in that top echelon of the bracket is a very hard thing to do. But I think for me, you look at that Ravens game, and it's a very frustrating game, right? Because Deshaun Watson played well in the second half, and it doesn't get talked about a lot that my guy was playing the majority of the season and in that game with a messed up shoulder, and he was dealing with a knee injury in that game, and he literally led a gritty comeback win against a hot Ravens team that was playing some hot football, on the road. And I thought that was very impressive, just the resilience of that win. But unfortunately, I would have liked to see how the Browns expanded after that game. But unfortunately, he got, obviously the injury became a big thing, and then his season ended. So we didn't really get to see them expand on that game, right? And that's where the frustrations come in, because you don't know, right? Would he finally get a rhythm with that victory? I give him confidence that, okay, I could win. I could be that guy again. Does Stefanski see something that worked and expand upon that and build on that next week? We don't know that, right? That's the very unfortunate part about a season getting cut short the way it did last year after that game. But I do think when you look at the team, they traded for Jerry Jeudy, they're giving him another weapon. It's really going to be hard to fail. Like, he would have to be literally what he was the last 2 years for the Browns to fail. And if that happens, then you got the worst contract in NFL history on your hands. And you probably already do, but that will confirm that, right? So I think for me, I think he should be at least decent enough. We saw Jacoby Brissett win some games with this offense, okay? We saw Baker Mayfield win, with this offense. We saw, who's the other guy missing? Last year, my guy, Joe Flacco, come in with no knowledge of the playbook and literally get this team to the playoffs and play well. Deshaun Watson, unless he's really that bad, he has to be competent enough to win games here with this defense in another year of Jim Schwartz's system. They played really well last year. He would have to be that bad to mess this up. And I understand we don't want to hear that. He's being paid $230 million guaranteed. We don't want to hear, he just has to be okay. We want to hear him be elite. But that's where we are, folks. That's where we are today. And if he doesn't win and he doesn't, show the Browns something and get them to the playoffs, they're going to be trying to move out that contract, after this year. So I got Deshaun Watson at number 20. At number 19, I'm going to go with the guy who was replaced by Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield at number 19 here on this list. Last year he had a very good season. I got to admit, Dave Canales, he came in there and he helped resurrected Baker Mayfield's career just like he did with Geno Smith. And I'm not going to lie, my expectations for the Buccaneers last year was really, really low. I had them winning 5 games at max, and I was wrong. I'm not afraid. I'm not shy to admit where I'm wrong. And Baker Mayfield impressed me last year. And, I think the reason why I have him 19 and not a little bit higher is because I want to see it again. This is show me again. Show me so I know it's real. Because when you look back at his track record in Cleveland, the rookie year, promising. Sophomore year, dud. Junior year, good. They made the playoffs, almost beat Kansas City. And then year 4, the arm injury, had 5 opportunities for game-winning drives in the fourth quarter, failed on all 5, right? So I need to see if last year was real, because he will be doing something this year, if he does it, something that he hasn't done before, which is be consistent. From a football perspective, just looking at him as a quarterback, he could improve with his footwork a little bit better. I think last year, I believe he got a lot of balls batted down at the line of scrimmage. I forgot the exact number, but that just shows you, I think it was like 17. The most of his career got batted down last year. And height obviously has a lot to do with that. But just accuracy with the footwork, because footwork leads to better accuracy down the field. If he could work on those intangible things, he's really not a bad quarterback as much as I used to think, So I'm going to have Baker Mayfield at number 19. We're going to see how the loss of Dave Canales affects him. So I got him at number 19. At number 18, Geno. Whoa, Geno. Look, I think Zach put Geno Smith a little bit too low on these rankings. Zach, feel free to respond after I'm done in regards to that. I still think he throws a nice deep ball. He has just the right touch. To me, he throws a better deep ball than Baker Mayfield. And I think he has talent. Like, when I watch Geno Smith and I watch film, he has talent, and you got to respect that, right? Last year, they had a lot of offensive line issues last year, so that kind of impacted him in the pocket, and obviously led to some turnovers. But he had some good games in there. One game that stands out was against the Cowboys when him and Dak Prescott was going back and forth, and they got this new dude in Ryan Grubb from Washington. And I think for me, he's going to bring that air raid style system to Seattle. We'll see if that translates to the NFL, if he makes some minor adjustments in regards to that. And I think it's going to allow Geno Smith to pull up numbers. You got JSN, who was a rookie last year. And I think this year he will have a better year in year 2. You still got talent, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. And Geno Smith got a rocket. He has a nice ball. So I think the talent is there. I think they should be better this year. I understand Pete Carroll retired, and we respect Pete Carroll's resume. But I like that young coach that came from Baltimore. That's their head coach right now. I think they're going to be a team to look out for. So I like the Seahawks, and I like Geno Smith at number 18. At number 17, I might get some pushback here, and I'm willing to stand on my sword here. I'm going to go with A-Rod, Aaron Rodgers at number 17. Entering the 41 club as a quarterback, coming off an Achilles injury, right after a down year, it's really hard for me to rank Aaron Rodgers. I'm not even going to lie. I think a lot of people think that Brady winning a Super Bowl at the age of 43 or 42, I think it was 41, is a new trend. No, it's an anomaly. Okay, quarterbacks, when they touch 40 years old, they're not the same guys. And I think people need to tamper with the expectations of thinking that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a top 10 quarterback right off the rip. It's not going to happen. I think those days are gone. I still think he throws a nice ball. He can still make some of those plays where it doesn't really rely on arm strength. It just relies on the mind and being able to move the defense with your eyes. The experience is going to kick in. He's going to still be able to function with this offense and make it much better than what was going on with Zach Wilson. So I still think the Jets still can be a threat in the AFC East, in the AFC in general, because of that defense and because of Aaron Rodgers' mind. But as far as physical peak, he's not in his prime no more. I'm not going to rank him over guys I have ahead of him when they're in their primes or entering it. Like, say what you want, and maybe I am biased to old guys in the NFL. I don't think the NFL is a grown man's league. Or excuse me, an old man's league. It's a grown man's league, but not an old man's league. So I'm kind of biased here. I'm willing to admit that there's bias when it comes to A-Rod's age and why I have 15 or 16 quarterbacks ahead of him. And we'll see what happens. The offensive line is still a question, even though they try to build upon that during the offseason. There's still a lot of questions more than it is answers, and that's why I'm going to go with A-Rod at number 17. And to cap off my list, I'm going to go with Trevor Lawrence at number 16. Look, I've been too good to Trevor on my rankings, and I am tired of it. I need to see something. I need to see his flag being planted in the ground, okay? Before his rookie year kicked off, I ranked him in my top 16. I'm like, Trevor is going to be a top 16 quarterback right off the rip. I got burnt. It was one of the worst seasons ever. Okay. And I understand it was Urban Meyer. Okay. But damn it, Trevor Lawrence played very bad that year. Terrible over-projecting right there. Then last year, I saw something, right? I'm like, okay, they won the playoff game. They almost beat Kansas City. He is ready to be a top 10 quarterback. I'm going off of the generational label, right? Because he was so hyped up. And when you watch him in college, he was one of the best college football players ever. So I'm buying stock into hypeness and what I saw in college more so than what I saw in his first couple years in the NFL. And I said, you know what? Yes, he's ready to be an MVP candidate. I'm going to rank him in my top 10. Last year, didn't even make the playoffs. And a lot of that had to do with injuries. I will give him that. Because you had Zay Jones that was dealing with injuries. We had Christian Kirk, who missed the last 5 games. We have Calvin Ridley, who was a little bit, iffy. He dropped a lot of balls, and then the play calling was stale. Yeah, I get it. But I'm ready.
Well, if I were to say this too, like Lawrence, we forget he got hurt himself. Remember that Monday night game against the Bengals?
Monday
like,
night
we thought
game,
he was done.
I brought that up because I was totally going to forget that. But you look at him the last couple of years, let's face facts, right? He's regressed. So the interceptions from 2 seasons ago to this past season went up from 8 to 14. And the touchdowns went down from 21 to 25. Excuse me, from 25 to 21. So he's regressed. And I got to see him take that next leap so I can be impressed. And I can say, all right, that's the guy I was hyped up to be. That dude, he's a top elite quarterback in this league. And I'm not going to oversell anymore. He's going to have to show me. And that's why I got him at number 16. So to recap my list, at number 20, I got Deshaun Watson. At number 19, I got Baker Mayfield. At number 18, I got Geno Smith. At number 17, I got A-Rod. And at number 16, I got Trevor Lawrence.
Zay, you still with us, man? You want to give some thoughts
He's
on?
having technical issues. right now. He texted me. So you could go ahead, Zach.
All right, yeah, Lil. Right off the bat, I actually wanted to say this. We'll get back into the quarterback list a little bit, but Adam Schefter just went on ESPN, and I just wanted to give this update. He says that the 49ers do not want and do not intend, I should say, on trading Brandon Ayuk, despite the fact that he has asked the team to officially move on from him. So it looks like the 49ers do not plan on trading Brandon Ayuk anytime soon. I know we just finished that topic. I wanted to give that update. So I'm curious to see.
Another update. Salute to my guy, Papa J, for subscribing to the channel just now. Okay, I appreciate the subscription, and I hope you like the content. All right, Zach.
No doubt, Lil. So I'll respond to your list first before I get into mine. A couple of things stand out. Of course, Aaron Rodgers being that low is one thing that definitely stands out for me. I'll just ask you, what are your expectations for him this season? Because when you have him this low, it's really telling me that you're not buying the Jets this year. And you think, do you think he's cooked? Do you think he's any semblance of the guy that he once was in Green Bay? I think you made some valid points. It's very rare to have a quarterback this old winning Super Bowls. And that might be an anomaly. It probably is. But do you just think that this guy is just a complete shell of himself and the Jets are going to have no success this year? Do you think that he's going to be anything close to that guy? Do you think he'll at least be able to make them lead them to the playoffs? What are your expectations for Aaron Rodgers this year?
I mean, Zach, I wish I could give you a concrete answer on that because I just don't know what to expect from A-Rod this year because of obviously how last year started. The 13 seconds he got, injured, a very serious injury at that. And the year before that, it was a down year. Now, he showed flashes in that down year. Games that come to mind was against the Dolphins, where he had a retro game. And I feel like he can give some of those retro games, this upcoming season of Aaron Rodgers going back in time. But he didn't win a lot. Well, excuse me. He didn't win the big one a lot in his prime, right? You think about A-Rod in his prime, everybody wants to talk about how talented he is, and clearly he is from the eyes, right? You've seen it, right? Yeah, he's talented, but he didn't win a lot then, right? He didn't win a lot of championships. He only made one and won one, right? And that was earlier in his career. So it's hard for me to believe that in his 40s, he's going to be able to just do something he hasn't done. And I understand the Jets have a good defense, and that's what's making this harder for me because I'm like, all right, the defense is really good. Okay, it's been really good for the last couple of years. What if he's just decent? They should be able to win.
And the offensive line, too. I know that was a big concern for many, before last year. The Jets did, they signed Tyron Smith, best left tackle available, Hall of Fame player. I know he's older and injury prone, but for insurance with that, they drafted Olu Fashanu in the top 10 from Penn State. So the Jets really did all they could to revamp the offensive line.
The offensive line, but, they got to play together. Continuity is a big thing when it comes to O-linemen, and we'll see how that pans out. But bottom line, they got to protect Aaron Rodgers. If they don't protect Aaron Rodgers, he's going to be a sitting duck in that pocket, and he's going to be hurt again. So we'll see what happens with A-Rod. It's just hard for me to really know what to expect this year, coming off of that serious injury and coming off a down year prior to that.
Gotcha. So Lawrence, I haven't hit on my list yet, so I'll save my thoughts on him. I do have some thoughts on Geno and Deshaun Watson, just because there were two guys I did already mention. Seattle's tough for me because I still think they have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, but I just think we're underestimating just how good of a coach Pete Carroll was and just how much of an impact he made on that franchise. And I like Mike McDonald. I think there's a chance that one day he is the right coach for Seattle, but I think it's going to take him a little bit of time. I like the hiring of Grubb as well, but I don't know if you would agree with me, Lil, and I like Geno. I think he's a great story, and I think he could be a productive player in this league remaining. But, do you see a scenario where Seattle at this time next year is not looking for a new quarterback? They just strike me as a team that's going to want to draft a quarterback in next year's draft. And that doesn't really have a ton to do with Geno. I think he proved a lot by turning his career around. But when you hire a new coach and a new offensive coordinator like this, odds are they're going to want to draft their new quarterback, right? So that's why I rank Geno a little bit lower on my list compared to you, really, because I don't really see a scenario where he is the Seahawks quarterback of the future. And it's weird. Seattle recommitted to him starting this offseason, but they didn't really double down on his guaranteed money. So I'm curious what you think about that.
when you look at Geno Smith right now, he's going to have the best bang for your buck contract in the NFL. Right now, that's Brock Purdy. But that's obviously going to change. He's going to get his money. He's going to get paid top of the line value. So he's going to have number one, right? As far as bang for your buck, but you look at the statistics and he's right up there. That's the flexibility that you have and the luxury that you have a guy who was competing like a top 10 quarterback at spurts and is giving you bang for your buck, So I think the Seahawks is willing to deal with that and enjoy that luxury for right now before addressing the quarterback in the future. Maybe that is something they do after the season, pending on how the season ends. But I think for me, Pete Carroll, as great as he was as a coach, as underrated as he was as a coach, because it was times where I seen a lot of people not mention him in the top 10, even when he was winning, and I'm like, yeah, he's a top 10 coach, right? As much as we can say that about him, at the end of the day, the league is getting, I won't say the league is getting older, it's getting newer, and he's getting older. He had to go eventually. Now, I don't think it had to be this year. I thought he did a decent job. I thought his job was safer than what it was, but eventually he had to go. The league is trending into the new era of new coaching, new minds, innovative minds, the Sean McVays, the Kyle Shanahans, the kid from not the kid, he's older than me, the guy from Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell. Those guys are the new guys now. And obviously Mike McDonald is not an offensive mind. He's a defensive guy, but you could look at it from that perspective. You got the guy from the Texans. My God, I don't know why names is blanking on me. What's my guy from the Texans head coach, man? Come on. I'm not forgetting his name. D'Amico Ryans.
Okay.
Yeah, D'Amico Ryans. You got the defensive innovators over there. Dan Campbell, right? So you got youth now, and I think that's where Seattle wanted to go, and I don't blame them.
And I agree, but I just think it's going to take them some time. Like Pete Carroll is just not a guy that you step in and replace right away. You see what I'm saying? I think from a win perspective, it could impact them this year, especially in that NFC West is an underrated division. We forget how good it is.
No, I agree. Anyway, Zach, the mic is you.
My last thought on your list, Lil, before I get to mine, I'm just out on Deshaun Watson. I really don't want to hear about that second half against the Ravens because it was one good half of football. And we have 11 other full games since he got to Cleveland where he just isn't good. I don't think it's a coincidence that they didn't bring back Joe Flacco. Jameis Winston is their backup quarterback because I thought if Watson struggled and Flacco was back, then the fans would just go all in for Flacco. We want Flacco because they saw Flacco win last year. And we've now seen 2 years in a row where Watson was on the bench. He wasn't playing. And other quarterbacks like Jacoby Brissett and Flacco were just flat out better. And it's unfortunate because I like Stefanski a lot. I think he's one of the better coaches in the league. I think Cleveland's roster is really talented, but I just think that decision they made to trade for him and pay him that contract, it's going to be a decision that ruins their franchise for a good decade. And I just don't see it with him. I don't see it with the team. And I'm out on Watson.
That's fair. I respect your opinion. I think you made some valid points there. Looking at and Zach is Zay's still having technical issues, but we'll figure that out in a minute. Looking at where you had him at 21. I had him at 20. No,
pretty similar,
Yeah.
I find it interesting that we only had him one spot apart. Meanwhile, I'm trashing him on my list, saying I'm not a fan. I wouldn't want him as my quarterback, and your tone was kind of oh, it's going to be hard for him to screw this up. He should be improved. So it was only one spot.
Literally, and it was almost the same spot. You remember when I said that I was going to rank Caleb Williams one spot ahead? He was going to replace Watson. Watson was going to be 21, but I changed it at the last second.
All right. So, Will, solid portion of your list. I will get into mine. Without further ado, we will go number 20 to number 16. Hopefully we get Zay back soon. But at number 20, I'm going to go with the guy that you have not mentioned yet. I will go with Kirk Cousins of the Falcons. And this is a guy that kind of similar to Purdy in, like you mentioned before, Lil. I think Cousins was one of the more difficult players for me to rank on this list because I've said many times, I think if Cousins would have stayed healthy last season, the Vikings could have been the team that challenged San Francisco in the NFC. They literally did it on Monday Night Football. They beat them, and that game was maybe the best game I've ever seen Kirk Cousins play. I think you could even make the case that last season was the best season that Kirk Cousins has ever played. And I like the move by the Falcons signing him this offseason. They were a team that really needed some stability at the quarterback position. And I'm pretty high on Atlanta entering the season. Right now, they would be my pick to win the NFC South. But I just don't think it's going to be that easy, right? Cousins being 35 years old, coming off a torn Achilles, that's a little concerning to me. And I just wonder if he's ever going to be able to be that same guy that we saw last year in Minnesota. And I think this quarterback situation in Atlanta, it's not exactly the same, but it really reminds me of Russell Wilson's rookie season in Seattle when the Seahawks signed Matt Flynn as a big money free agent, signed him to a big contract in the offseason, and then they get to training camp, and it's just clear that Russell Wilson is the better quarterback, even though he was a rookie 4th-round pick at the time. He was just better. And I'm not saying that I think Michael Penix is going to be the Falcons starter week 1. That's not going to happen. But I do think that pick was so controversial that all eyes are going to be on the Falcons this season right away, especially if Cousins doesn't play well. I understand that Raheem Morris is a first-year head coach, but this team has the talent, and they're ready to win right now. If they don't win the South, I think this season should be considered a disappointment. So my bold prediction for the Falcons is that I'm not really sure if it's going to be because of injury or because of poor performance from Kirk Cousins, but I do think that Michael Penix Jr. is going to be starting games at some point this season for the Falcons. The pick was just so ripped and so maligned by everyone, and it's not really because of anything Penix did himself. What if it just turns out Michael Penix right now is a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins? I think he might be. I really do. I really think that could be the case because this guy was the best quarterback in college football last season. And I think that he's going to be a very good player in the NFL. And I think when it's all said and done, the more I thought about it, I don't think Atlanta's going to regret that pick. I think Michael Penix will be a successful pro, and I think it's going to work out for him in Atlanta. I will have Kirk Cousins at number 20. At number 19, I'm going to go with Tua Tagovailoa of the Dolphins. And I'm going to start off by saying that props to Tua. Like, he needed to prove last season that he could stay healthy for a full year, and that's exactly what he did. It's funny. It really wasn't that long ago that people were saying he should retire from playing football. That's how concerning the injuries were for Tua. And now he's about to get paid and be locked in as the Dolphins franchise quarterback about for the next half decade. And I know that there's been a lot of conversations about if Tua and Miami are going to get this deal done. And I'm just going to say it right now. I do expect Tua to get paid and to get locked up before next season kicks off because the Dolphins don't have another choice. Like, as good of a coach as Mike McDaniel is, we've seen the Dolphins without Tua at quarterback, right? We've seen them with Skylar Thompson. We've seen them with Teddy Bridgewater, and their offense fell off a cliff. So I do think Tua has value to the Dolphins. I think he's going to get paid pretty soon. But I also think there's a decent chance, speaking of the guy I just was talking about, like, I think Tua could be the modern-day Kirk Cousins, a guy that consistently puts up great numbers throughout a regular season. And if he were to become a free agent right now, there would be a ton of teams knocking on his door. But as long as he's your quarterback, I think there are going to be serious questions about, can your team win a championship with Tua Tagovailoa as your starting quarterback? I think that's where the Dolphins are right now. I'll have Tua at number 19. At number 18, I will go with the guy Will just mentioned. His placement on our list are not too far off. I will go with Baker Mayfield of the Bucs at number 18. I just wanted to say I'm thrilled for Baker. I'm thrilled I could put him this high on the list after the season that he just had. 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, leading the Buccaneers to an NFC South title and a playoff victory. And I still think back on his time in Cleveland. Will, you mentioned a lot of it, but although he never turned out to be the guy that they expected when they took him with that number 1 pick, this guy won the Browns their first playoff game in 2 decades against a team in the Steelers and a quarterback in Ben Roethlisberger that just dominated the Browns for 2 decades. And then he suffers a brutal injury early in the next season. He insists on playing through it. And sure, he wasn't that good during that season. But the injury clearly impacted him. And Cleveland's response to that was just to throw him to the side for a guy in Deshaun Watson that just isn't trustworthy. He isn't a reliable human being. And the bottom line is he'll just never be the same guy that he was in Houston. I'm curious to see how Baker follows up last season, considering just how well it went. I do think there's a chance he could take like a slight step back or two without Dave Canales, maybe. But I'll say this. I really like the Buccaneers hiring a new offensive coordinator to replace Canales, Liam Cohen. He comes from the college game, Kentucky, but he was really the guy that developed Will Levis at Kentucky into a pro and a second round pick, should have been a first round pick. And Cohen and Mayfield actually worked together because he was the quarterback's coach with the Rams when Baker Mayfield had that brief stint in LA and he beat the Raiders on that epic drive on Thursday Night Football. I think the Buccaneers, my last point on them, they made sure Mike Evans was back. That was huge. He's obviously a great wide receiver, a great player, as I'm happy to have our guy Zay back. We're in the middle of our quarterback list right now. Baker Mayfield was also a free agent, and they locked him up, so that was good. I think Baker Mayfield is a quarterback you could win with in the NFL. I'm thrilled that he's having success. I'll have him at number 18. Now, it's funny, Will, you had Aaron Rodgers at number 17, which is pretty controversial, and I'm going to spice things up for my list as well. And it's funny because these two guys are pretty connected. They were teammates for a few years. I'm going to go with Jordan Love of the Packers at number 17. It's time for me to get very controversial. And I know for a fact that I'm going to have Jordan Love lower than most. I totally understand that. But let me just say this. Last season, Jordan Love was the number 31 quarterback on my list. I had him that low. I had him at number 31, the second worst quarterback in the entire NFL. That's what was where I had him on my list. And I was pretty unimpressed with him when he started that game against the Chiefs. I still don't even think the Packers should have drafted him because if they took T. Higgins instead, there's a good chance they have a Super Bowl ring by now in the Rodgers era. But to Love's credit, he played very well in the back end of last year. And he played well enough for him to move up 14 spots on my list. Like, I don't think that should be taken to the curb. Like, he improved by 14 spots on my list this year compared to last year. And I know that there's this massive rush to already crown Jordan Love as one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but he was flat out bad for the first 10 games of last season. And I totally understand that he played well in the second half, but I just think I need to see a little bit more from him before I put him any higher. I will credit the Packers. They snuck into the playoffs last year, but I also got to admit the NFC last year was the worst I've ever seen that conference in a very long time. Most years, you're not making the playoffs if you're going 9-8. I'll credit the Packers for dominating the Cowboys in that playoff game from start to finish, but that Dallas team was a sinking ship. I think that game was more about Dallas and their incompetence than anything else. And finally, Love was very good in that first half of the next playoff game against the 49ers. But let's be honest, the Packers had zero business losing that game. I thought they were the better team, and Love was just not good in the second half of that game. I think we're overrating the Packers' weapons just a little bit. I get all their wide receivers are still super young, but I'll ask you guys, who is their best wide receiver? Christian Watson? I don't really trust him to stay healthy. I like Romeo Doubs. I like the kid Wicks. But just like the entire Packers team, I just need to see it from a bigger sample size. I need to see more than just 7 or 8 good games. Green Bay and Houston are two teams that I put in a similar category. They're two teams that have a ton of hype right now. You won't see anyone picking either of those two teams not to live up to expectations. But I've just been watching football long enough to know it's never that easy. Just ask the Jaguars from last season. They were the team that everyone was hyping up. Everyone thinking that Trevor Lawrence is going to take this big leap, this next step, and we know what happened. So I will go with Jordan Love at number 17, and I will finish up this portion of my list at number 16 with the guy that right before Zay hopped off. This was a guy we spent a little bit of time talking about. I will go with Anthony Richardson of the Colts at number 16. It really wasn't that long ago we were doing this list, and I put a guy that was going into year number 2 of the Shane Steichen system at number 16, despite being super unproven. And that guy was Jalen Hurts, and he ended up taking the Eagles to a Super Bowl that year, and he was an MVP candidate. I'm going to do the same thing with Richardson here. I know that he only played in 4 games last year, but I said on the show last week, and I'll say it again, when the Colts drafted Anthony Richardson, I thought he had the potential to be really good one day. But based on what I saw at Florida, I thought he'd have to sit a year or two to really develop and really learn how to play in the NFL and develop as a mature passer. But last season, he looked more comfortable than I could have ever imagined. He looked comfortable in the pocket. He looked comfortable going to his second or third reads. And there were just a handful of plays when you're watching him and you turn to your friend sitting next to you on the couch and you say, wow, I'm not really sure how many other guys in the league could have just done that. I understand the Texans are the team in the AFC South that's getting a ton of hype right now. But I also think we forget that these Colts last season were just a couple plays away from winning the AFC South with Gardner Minshew playing quarterback. They won 9 games. And I think Anthony Richardson is going to be a breakout star for this season. I think he's really going to pop in year number 2 playing with Shane Steichen. I'm higher on him than most. I'll have him at number 16 on my list. So to recap this portion of the list, I will have Kirk Cousins at number 20. I will have Tua Tagovailoa at number 19. I will have Baker Mayfield at number 18, Jordan Love at number 17, and Anthony Richardson at number 16. Zay, I'll throw it to you. I know we're happy to have you back. Did anything stand out there?
Real quick, Lil, could you recap your list very quickly?
Yeah, I actually sent it to you, DM. So
All right,
you
let
can
me
check
check
that
it
as
out
well.
real quick before you said it. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so I think the main thing I want to highlight on the list between both lists is that Kyler Murray is nowhere to be found. So I'm assuming breakout year for Kyler. He's about to have a fantastic year. That's what I'm assuming. I think Lil was spot on about Aaron Rodgers, right? I'm a Jets fan. I've been toting Jets all around, talking about how great it was to get Aaron Rodgers. I'm not expecting him. Let's say that I'm not expecting him to get 30 touchdowns this upcoming season or to be prime Aaron Rodgers. I'm not expecting him to be to be better than what he was before. I think his last year in Green Bay, where everyone said it was a career low year, I think that's just enough for what the Jets need, because the Jets have been so inept at the quarterback position. They need some type of just good, solid enough, average quarterback play. That's what the Jets need, average quarterback play, because the last 3-4 years has been so below average. We don't know what mediocrity looks like at the quarterback position. We know what terrible looks like. We know what don't be on the field looks like, not mediocrity. So I think 17, middle of the pack, probably slightly worse than middle of the pack. Aaron Rodgers, I think that's enough as a quarterback position. I am shocked that Kirk Cousins is at number 20.
Me too.
In my opinion, I think Kirk Cousins, the last several years, in terms of statistics, in terms of game-winning drives, fourth quarter play, he's arguably a top 10 quarterback in the league. And I think that's what statistically has shown us, and what he's been doing on the Minnesota Vikings. I think on Atlanta Falcons, which in my opinion has more weapons, not better, more weapons than the Vikings in terms of running back, in terms of tight end, in terms of receivers. I think, in my opinion, slightly better offensive line play in Atlanta. I think Kirk Cousins is going to elevate into a better statistical year than he was with the Minnesota Vikings the last 2 seasons. I believe 2 years ago he had 14 picks. I don't see him throwing more than 10 on Atlanta. I don't see that happening. So I was surprised to hear that 20 that you had Kirk Cousins. And I actually want to know, do you feel like he's going to have a bad year coming off that Achilles tear? I know.
Zach, and Zay, before Zach answers that question, right, I do want to chip into that real quickly, because I'm not gonna lie, Zach, you my guy. I respect your mind. I respect your football mind. But I'm not gonna lie, your list is a mess right now, bro. I just gotta be honest with you, bro. Especially when it comes to the over projections. I'm gonna get to that in a minute. I have a lot to say about Chills, but I want to just add my thoughts with the Rodgers and the Kirk Cousins, because I think you can look at these two guys the same. Now, I understand that all-time Aaron Rodgers is obviously a better player than Kirk Cousins, right? We know that, even though both of them didn't show up in the playoffs, you can argue. But they are more similar than what people are realizing. Zach, when you say Kirk Cousins on your list, you said that part of the reasons, right, was the Michael Penix situation. I could respect that angle, even if I disagree, right? But then you said that he's coming off an Achilles injury, and then you don't know if he's going to be the same. I'm saying the same thing about Aaron Rodgers. So I don't understand why these two guys will be further apart when they should be closer, because I can look at them the same way. Kirk Cousins, unlike Rodgers, was playing his best football last year before he got hurt, and he's younger, and he's 35. Rodgers is 41. So I'm curious to know why Rodgers is significantly, maybe not significantly, right? Because we don't know where you're going to have him next. But why is he so much higher than Kirk and on the same tier? Is it because you're a Jets fan? Like, talk to me. Or you?
Nah, it's not that. First of all, I just think the Penix situation, you brought it up, like, it's so interesting. Like, no one's talking about that. Everyone ripped the Falcons for the pick, but what happens if Penix is just better? He's 24 years old. He was arguably the best quarterback in all of college football last year. And here's the other thing that we didn't mention. Rodgers tore the Achilles week 1, like right away. Cousins tore his in like early November, right? So Rodgers has had a lot more time to recover. I'll say that right off the bat. And I just think that with Rodgers, I understand you can make the case Atlanta is a good situation with all of their weapons, but it's just as simple as I think Aaron Rodgers is better than Kirk Cousins. Like he has been for his entire career, and I don't think that's going to change coming off the Achilles. And I think Rodgers is going to be super motivated. I'll get to my thoughts on him fully when I mention him on my list.
Quick question, Zach, because all the time Rodgers is a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins. Clearly, anybody saying otherwise don't know what they're talking about. But obviously, you were very vocal over the last couple of shows of last year, even on this show, that Kirk Cousins' best year was last year. You said Rodgers is a better football player. If Rodgers didn't get hurt last year, how much better would he be than Kirk Cousins last year when Kirk Cousins was literally arguably a top 5 quarterback last year? You thought Rodgers would have been that good if he didn't get hurt.
I mean, I'm not sure about that, but Cousins was fully healthy last year, and now he's not. And I think that's concerning to me. And again, I think the fact that Rodgers suffered the injury a few months prior to Cousins, like that makes a difference for me. And more importantly, Lil, like part of the reason why I have Cousins low is straight up, I think Penix could steal his job. I really believe that. No one's stealing Aaron Rodgers' job. The Falcons took Penix in the top 10, the number 8 overall pick. I know they just paid Kirk Cousins, but there's a reason why they did that with Penix. They love him that much. They got to love him in order to make that pick. If the Falcons start off poorly, they play the Steelers at home week 1. If they lose that game, it's going to start. And if that continues, I do think there's a chance Penix takes his job because the Falcons have to win this year. If they don't win the NFC South, that's a massive disappointment. So for Cousins, he has to play well right away or else he's in trouble. The conversations are going to start. Michael Penix could have been the number 1 overall pick in the draft if he played better in the national championship game against Michigan. And he didn't, but he really raised his draft stock. No one thought this guy was going to be a top 10 pick. No one thought a team would take a 24-year-old quarterback with 2 torn ACLs in his college career in the top 10. No one thought that, and they did it.
One more point, and Zay, I'll let you go. You know, it's funny because as much as we are comparing Rodgers to Kirk Cousins, and I know it may sound idiotic, but it just gives me more ideas of the similarities between these two guys because this situation actually reminds me of Rodgers' last couple years in Green Bay when they drafted Jordan Love, right? When they should have committed to building a contender around Rodgers, probably get him a receiver. They took Jordan Love and Rodgers just balled out that year, won the MVP, okay, and then obviously the rest is history. I can see the same thing happening here with the Falcons when they just take, Michael Penix out the blue, and it motivates, Kirk Cousins to really have another year like he did last year.
Well, one point I want to make on that, though, I'm not going to lie. I was pretty turned off by Kirk Cousins' mindset after the Falcons drafted Kirk Cousins. He was complaining to the media saying, oh, no one told me, why didn't they do that? Like, bro, the Falcons don't owe you anything. They just paid you a historic amount of money. All you've done is rob these teams when you're a free agent of these of big money. And what have you won? You've never won anything in the playoffs. That turned me off with Kirk Cousins. I don't love his mindset going into this. He should want to mentor Michael Penix. He should want to make sure that he's clearly going to be better than him and beat him out. I know it's not a competition, but I was kind of turned off by that, how negative Kirk Cousins was in regards to that Penix picks. That's not a good start to his tenure in Atlanta.
I agree with Dujane 1,000%. Chances are with Kirk Cousins, they probably wasn't going to pick low again, which means that they probably would have been a football purgatory after Kirk Cousins. This move was insurance. That's how I look at it.
But you would agree, though, when you take a quarterback like Penix in the top 10, that means Cousins' time is limited. Like, he's not going to – I know he just signed there, but they're already – looking and trying to pivot when they can move on. If you take a quarterback in the top 10, you're going to have to play him sooner rather than later, especially when he's 24 years old.
Yeah, that was a questionable pick for sure. That's not even like because you're banking on like Zach said, you're banking on Kirk Cousins falling off the next 2 years. Like if he's playing, what if Kirk Cousins picks up where he left off? He plays fantastic the next 2 years. You're not gonna cut him or get rid of him to play Penix. So it's gonna be interesting. But I want to say this, right? Because real quick before we get into this, Lil, I want to say this: the list is very interesting, like especially in the middle of the package, especially that Jordan Love pick. Because I even said off air, and I said this, I believe in a group chat as well, that I believe Jordan Love does have a down year because I feel like teams are going to play him differently. I feel like teams saw a good margin of what he does on the football field, especially that last play of the playoffs where he threw in the middle of the field. He makes a lot of gutsy plays. You know, he has some sort of consistency for like a week or two, and then he goes out and just plays like, who the hell are you? Like, you don't play that well after a certain while. So his inconsistency, I think, is going to show a lot more this season, especially when they know his tendencies going into the game. So I think Jordan Love could be in that middle of the pack, probably even lower than that. But that I agree with that Jordan Love pick because it's a possibility that he could have just had like a Jared Goff, Geno Smith type of year when it was a fantastic year. But now you have to follow up on it. What do you do now to help Green Bay win take that next step?
I mean, wait till y'all see where I have Jordan Love. Y'all probably gonna fall out y'all seats because of the difference. If y'all believe that Jordan Love is a 17th best quarterback in football or should be arguably lower, wait till you see where I have him. So I'm gonna say, okay.
I just straight up credit to Love. He was much better than I ever thought. Again, I had him at number 31 at this time last year. I prematurely labeled him as a bust. Maybe that was a little bit unfair, but I just want to see more. You know, he had 8 good games, and credit to him for that. But he was also terrible in the first 10 games.
This is the inconsistencies, though, Zach. That's what I said. And I'm not trying to be mean here. Obviously, we cool, we boys and all that. I love doing the podcast with you and Zay. But that's why I said your list is a mess, because you're saying I want to see more, but yet you got AR-15 and you barely saw him, and he didn't do nothing in college like that. And you got him mad high. You are higher than him. You know, even if it's like a spot or two, you still got him higher, even though Jordan Love made the playoffs and had more on film, you know, to kind of go off of than AR-15. Like, I think
I'll
it's just
respond to that.
inconsistent.
Richardson played in 4 games, but he was very good in those 4 games. With
I
Love,
don't know about very good. I saw flashes, but not very good.
He was very good to me. He popped off the TV. He looks like, I think he could pop this year. But with Jordan Love, yeah, he played in more games. He played in 18, but he was bad in 10 and very good in 10. So I just want to see bigger
injuries.
sample size.
I mean, Aaron Jones was hurt. I mean, the offensive lineman was hurt. I mean, you know, yes, he's not a rookie anymore. Clearly, he wasn't a rookie last year, but technically he kind of is as far as playing and being a full-time starter. I mean, you need those things to be in place for you to really have success, unless you're a veteran. And even veterans can't have success in those situations at time. I think y'all ranking him a little bit too low, but that's just me.
I just wish that 49er game, man, that second half, he was terrible. That might have been their chance. Like, I would have loved to see them close out that game. Maybe they could have even gone to the Super Bowl if they would have won. But yeah, I just think the Packers, they have a lot of hype right now, and I'm just gonna stay away.
All right. Any last thoughts, Zay, on the rankings, or you know?
Oh, hey, listen, man, please like and subscribe to the channel. Most importantly, hope everyone's enjoying the show thus far. Man, these quarterback lists always just gets me excited for the season that's to come, especially with the list, especially with like guys going too high, guys going too low. I would love it. I can't wait when the season starts and I match up the list to their performance. I'm like, all right, you got some accurate ones, but the other ones like, you kind of reached there. But I'm excited for it this upcoming season. Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.